Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So a little backstory. I've known Anne for a long time, 6th grade to now. We've been friends for most of the time, and we are those friends who tend to flirt with each other for fun, but it never goes past that. But boy, do I wish some days. Now, we lost contact when I moved my sophomore year of high school. A few months ago, I bumped into her in a local big box store. We talked for a bit and we swapped numbers so we could hang out. A few days later, I find out she's dating this guy who I will call Jerk because he's a freaking jerk, plain and simple. So the Jerk and my brother will be together since they used to be friends. The Jerk starts telling my brother how he's sleeping with this girl and he's basically using her for a place to stay for a few days until he gets his own place. While he decided to show my brother some risque pictures he took of her, my brother knew who it was right away and had the Jerk forward him the pictures, to which he did. My brother sent me the pictures and I turned around and called Anne and told her to come over for a bit. That we needed to talk. It was important. About 45 minutes later, Anne gets to my house. She sees me looking pissed and asks what happened. I showed her the pictures and told her that the Jerk works with my brother and he sent them to him while bragging that he was using you for a place to live. Quick side note, Anne is a spitfire when you cross her, so she gets pissed and calls the Jerk and roasts him out for 45 minutes. The Jerk fails to realize that the store he works at has super high definition cameras facing the counters because it's been robbed 8 to 9 times. So I call the boss, she's still the boss there, I just don't work there anymore, and tell her that the Jerk is showing pictures that are not safe for work to employees and possibly customers as well. Boss pulls a camera footage from the time in question and can clearly see said pictures on his phone along with more inappropriate stuff he does during his shift. So he gets a 3-week suspension and has a massive write-up. He's now got 1 foot out of the door and about to be 2. The state has also been investigating the $300 plus in missing scratch tickets, so they came down on him as well for unlawful distribution of porn. Now for the revenge part of this. Anne told him they were done after a few days of her thinking what to do about him. He didn't take too kindly to that and started threatening her. My dad is the owner of a local transport business. They do cabs, limos, and so on. While I call him and tell him that the Jerk is going after Anne, now most of the employees at the station have met Anne and they all love her and they planned on offering her a job anyhow. Well, the Jerk called to get a cab to Anne's apartment like he did every weekend. While I took the cab and got Jerk and told him we had to swing by the station because I left my phone there. We pull up and I walk in and tell Anne he's in the cab. Dad comes out from the back and sees him in the cab. He goes to his computer and uses a remote for the cab and shuts it down. So I went to tell him the cab had a malfunction and he needs to wait inside for a few minutes while we fix it. The Jerk goes inside, sees Anne sitting at my desk while a dozen roses there and a card that says love you. I popped them for my grandma because she was almost back from a month-and-a-half trip to South America. The Jerk flipped out and lunged at Anne. Big mistake, his dad is about 6'6", 315 pounds of muscle. The Jerk grabbed Anne by the neck and before he knew what happened, Dad had him on the floor and pinned him. The other driver, who we will call the Godfather because he has a Bronx accent, picks the Jerk up, pulls him outside and ties him to the pole by the building. Now this pole is right next to the sprinkler system for the lawn. I turned it on full blast and left the Jerk there until the cops came to get him. Now 95% of the cops know my family as this is a rather small town and we all get along great. The footage of him being tied to a pole mysteriously disappeared from the evidence lockers after that night. He was released on bond and had to go to court, so he called a cab company to get a ride to the courthouse because it's a thunderstorm and he didn't want to walk 8 miles. Big mistake. The driver drove extra carefully because the roads were flooded by 4 inches of rain and visibility was low due to fog. The jerk was 45 minutes late to his hearing and was held in contempt of court, plus got charged with assault, trespassing, and possession. The jerk was about 45 minutes late to his hearing and was held in contempt of court. Plus, he got charged with assault, trespassing, and possession because he had some coke on him. The judge threw the book at him and gave him 10 years, but would reduce it to 5 if he told who his dealer is. The jerk tried to play me, but it didn't go over well, so he came clean and got 5 years. And the jerk was put into a cell with a guy who is known for beating guys who abuse women and children. From what I heard from a buddy who's a guard, the jerk spent the first 2 weeks of his 5 years in the hospital because he got the life kicked out of him. And now he's a yard witch, meaning he gets the worst jobs, and anytime it's a two-man job, he gets pinned on it by himself. Word travels fast, and the poor jerk found out just how bad it can be. It was a typical busy Saturday afternoon at the mall. Shoppers were bustling about, searching for deals and browsing the latest fashions. I was among them, window shopping and enjoying the sights and sounds of the mall. And that's when I noticed a commotion near one of the stores. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A mother, Karen, and her 3 kids were in the center of a crowd. Karen had an air of entitlement, and her kids were causing a scene, pushing and shoving other shoppers. The 3 kids were laughing and pointing at a blind girl who was trying to make her way through the crowd. The blind girl was using a cane to navigate and wearing a pair of glasses. I heard Karen say to the blind girl, "You should watch where you're going. You bumped into me and my kids." The blind girl apologized, but Karen continued to berate her and even demanded that the girl compensate her for the inconvenience. Karen went on to say that her kid wants to play with her cane and the glasses would look nice on her. The poor girl was understandably confused and scared, tried to defend herself, but Karen snatched the glasses off her face and took the cane from her hand. The girl stumbled and fell to the ground. Karen didn't even seem to notice what she had done. She was too busy admiring her new glasses and the cane in her kid's hand. Just as Karen started to leave the scene, a young man came out of nowhere with a flying kick to Karen's side that sent her down instantly. He snatched the glasses off her face with her back to the ground and walked up to the kid and snatched the cane from him as well. He then helped the girl and picked her up off the floor as she turned out to be his older sister. Gave Karen a cold look, stared her down, and then walked away. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. It was clear that the girl and her brother had came into the mall together, but were separated for a while, and that's when Karen decided to take advantage of the poor girl and try to rob her of her belongings. But when the young man came back to where he left his sister, he saw what he saw and reacted instinctively. The crowd was in shock and the security guards were quick to apprehend Karen. I felt terrible for the poor blind girl, who was understandably shaken by the incident. She was grateful for the help of her younger brother and other shoppers, but getting robbed of her glasses and her cane like that was probably too much for her. As for Karen, she was left to face the consequences of her entitled behavior and was seen being escorted out of the mall in handcuffs by the 2 police officers who investigated the whole incident. I couldn't help but think that this kind of behavior is never acceptable. It's a reminder that we all need to be aware of how our actions affect others, and we should always treat others with kindness and respect. It was a cruel and heartless act, and it's a sad reality that some people still think that they can bully and exploit the vulnerable for their own gain. It was heartening to see the young men standing up for what was right. First, I'll say that I was a frozen food manager in a large supermarket. The man I'll call Joan took my place after I found another job. After 3 days in a new job, I found out that my new boss had lied to me about the amount of time I would work each day and about the work I would be doing. I went to my old boss at the supermarket and asked if he'd hire me back. He did so without hesitation. I didn't expect that he would put me back in my old position, but he insisted on it. Therefore, John was put back to his old position. This part will come up again later in the story. Throughout the years, John and I had hit it off as friends. We went fishing together. Our families met in Florida one year. We went to each other's places and played cards. Since we lived pretty close to each other, we would drive bikes to work together also. After a time, I was eventually made the grocery department manager. I was third in line of management in the store behind the manager and the assistant manager. I don't remember exactly when John and my friendship went off the tracks, but eventually it did. All of a sudden, different people were coming up to me and asking me things I supposedly said. In my night, stalking crew was the hardest. I couldn't figure out why they were turning so much against me. I've always been an easygoing guy. If anyone had any problems, all they had to do was come up and talk to me about it. Eventually, I figured out it was John. While being a friend to me up front, he was tapping me in the back. I started working nights once in a while so I could get to know those guys a little better. And for them to know what kind of person I was, that seemed to work for the most part. At some point, John got transferred back to being the frozen foods manager. Most days at lunch, he would bring in some type of frozen dinner that sales reps had covered for him. As for me, it was none of my business, although I thought it was weird. I actually saw him switching labels for his wife when she was in the store once. That was in the 80s before the scanners. I didn't turn him in because if I had, he would have at the most received a slap on the hand. Then he would have made my life miserable. If I was ever going to turn him in, it would have to be for something he would get fired for. Then the fateful day arrives. One of our other department managers had seen enough and turned him in for the frozen dinner thing. As I predicted, he got a slap on the hand. He then went around the store telling anyone who listened that I was the one who tattled. The other department manager couldn't stand it, so he confronted him, told him she was a culprit, and she also made sure everyone knew it. He immediately beelined to me and tried saying that he was being misunderstood. I didn't say much, just shrugged it off. This was his introduction to karma. No one in the store trusted or believed him anymore. The manager that turned him in told me that John felt that any promotion I got should have been his from the time I had quit years ago. No, I got promotions because of my ability and the trust the store manager had in me. It wasn't too long after that a new grocery store was opening up in town. John applied for a management position and got it. He spent the next couple weeks trying to recruit other store employees to go over with him. He struck out. In his new job, he ended up being third in line of management. I am not really sure what his position was though. Once their old habits die hard, he started trying to sabotage the assistant manager. They didn't fall for it though, and were fired after a few weeks. That was karma number 2. Karma number 3 was the sweetest to me by far. Now he is without a job and he comes back begging to our store manager for any type of position. Even a carryout, someone who bags groceries for the store. The revenge? The manager then comes to me and asks my opinion. I told her that we don't need the drama, and if it were me, I wouldn't hire him back. She didn't. Now, had John gone on his abilities instead of trying to sabotage other people, he could have gone a long way. The company expanded to a few more stores after that, so he would have had a lot of options. I always felt bad about pushing him out of the frozen position all those years ago, but it wasn't my call. I just wish that all of those times we were together outside of work, he'd have talked to me about it. To set the premise, at my previous job, my boss made up a position as a trainer. It wasn't an official company position. It's worth noting he was carrying on an affair with a colleague at the time also. My boss and I hadn't seen eye to eye all the time because I advocate for the frontline employees and he says this makes it so he cannot trust me. I put it for my position because I've been training new hires for 7 years, even sent overseas to do so. I also have a degree in education, 11 years in the industry, and created and compiled training information used system-wide. It was just something I was passionate about. He gave the position to the colleague he was sleeping with without even interviewing anyone. I was visibly upset when they broke the news to me, so he FaceTimed me. He had his subordinate break the news. I asked him why he didn't have the courtesy of at least giving me 25 minutes of his time as an opportunity for my development of growth during an interview. He said every day is an interview, and that because I'm a caretaker for my dad, Parkinson, I couldn't be relied on to show up for work. Which I find offensive because I've taken off 2 days in 3 years for my dad, each were ER visits. I ended the call with a subordinate present, and he was like, "You good?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine, but I'm going to go to HR. I am going to find a new job and I'm not going to feel sorry. But if I come back, it'll be in his office." I kicked the job search into high gear and pretty quickly found a new job that paid twice as much. I put my 2 weeks in, but during that time I organized that joint 5-man HR report in regards to my boss's illicit affair. I deleted all of my intellectual property out of the shared system. Hundreds of training documents and slideshows, including 15-day new hire courses. And now, I am making twice as much. My old boss was walked off company property and terminated. The person who was supposed to be the trainer had no information and they abolished the role. And I just put my application in for his position. Bummer. If only I had 25 minutes of his time. I know he has a lot more of it now. So, during the first semester of senior year, I signed up for this class called Team Sports, which was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. Let's just say I was not prepared for the freak show that went down that semester. The thing is, I was unaware that girls apparently don't sign up for this class. I joined the class because, to quote a random guy I overheard yesterday, I get credit for playing basketball. For the first few weeks it was pretty fun. We played a lot of knockout and kickball, which are two of my favorite games. There was even this guy in my class who would sometimes go out of his way to help me score because I'm kinda crap at sports. After the kickball unit, my coach decided to throw stuff at the wall and turned every day into a free day, which basically meant do whatever the hell you want, so the guys in my class would just play half-court basketball every day. And this is when the class stopped being fun. I am not a huge fan of structured gym classes, but after our coach stopped making us play team sports, it was every person for themselves, and by that I mean just me. Now that the guys weren't required to let me play with them, they didn't. A lot of times they would do everything just to keep me out of their games. Fast forward 2.5 months, and I have managed to somehow befriend one of the guys in my class. This was extremely helpful because he would sort of advocate for me, which resulted in the other guys reluctantly agreeing to let me play. By now, there were about 3 weeks left in the semester, and I was finally enjoying the class again. A week later, some of the guys got fed up in every class. What began was a huge argument about whether I should get to play or not. This really pissed off the guys who weren't arguing and just wanted to play. So some of them started siding with me just to get everyone to shut up and start the game. One day I made a deal with them. The deal was that if I could steal the ball from someone during the next game, I would get to play for the rest of the semester without having to listen to them complain about it. And if I couldn't, I would sit out for the rest. Obviously, this deal was very appealing to them because they had the advantage. I've never really been an aggressive basketball player, but for the next 10 minutes, I played like my life depended on it. At one point, I accidentally knocked someone over, although I think part of it was just him being super dramatic. Anyway, I never make bets like these because I'm extremely unlucky and I never win them even if I think I can. I made this one out of desperation. I didn't think I would win. And yet, life is always full of surprises. I managed to steal the ball near the end of the game, which I'm not ashamed to say was the proudest moment of my life. The score was like 19-18 or something, which meant that one more shot could have lost me the bet. And they didn't even finish the game, which told me that they were beyond livid because they are definitely not the type to leave a game unfinished, especially with a score that close. For the rest of the day I got super cocky and started dropping my victory in their faces. I was so happy that I finally got one up them after all those weeks that I became downright delusional thinking that I changed the game for women all over the world, and that this event would go down in history or something. Fast forward to the next gym class, the guys suddenly decided that they didn't want to play basketball anymore. I don't even know what to say at this point other than I'm not sure who actually got revenge in this situation.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.